It's basically duct tape over duct tape over duct tape. Hello everyone, my name is Ruben van Aarle and I'm here with my brother Ramon.
Hello, my name is Ramon.
And we are Brothers in Tax. Welcome to our podcast where we will talk about our years in tax, what is happening with tax technology and our business endeavors. A lot has changed over 25 years in tax, and as mentioned before, it feels like someone has pushed a button at the beginning of 2026. How will the world of tax evolve? Well, we always talk about the 3 C's, Ramon. Can you elaborate a little bit about the 3 C's?
Yes, of course. But first, what happened with your leg? Because you have an injury, or?
Yeah. Next to brothers in tax, we were also last week brothers in enduro driving, and I was actually a little bit less lucky, right?
Maybe you're better in tax than in driving a motorbike, right?
Apparently.
Okay. Well.
And I was actually not even driving the bike, right? I was standing still.
I know, very unlucky. So hope you get well soon. So next week injury?
Next, the injury I have next week. The surgery.
Sorry, the surgery. Okay, now so let's talk about tax. Better than talking about motorbikes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the 3 C's. Well, you came up with the idea. So what are the 3 C's?
Yeah, so we think there is kind of a perfect storm in the corporate international landscape, right? There is an increase of complexity. There is an increase of compliancy, and there is everywhere where we talk, let's say, to the tax advisors, but also the in-house tax people. There is a decrease of capacity, right? Less people.
Yeah, that's true. Let's focus on the first, the compliance part.
Exactly, on the compliance part. What do you see? Let's say you have been in tax almost also 25 years. Filing tax returns.
It's the burden is becoming more and more bigger, I would say, and I think we discussed in a previous episode that the tax advisors, they're not really fond of making tax returns, but if you look at the big companies, well, they have to do the VAT, they have to do the corporate income tax, they have transfer pricing filings and whatever, and now we have Keeyns. We come up with we learn from new taxes that we need. For example, in Brazil, all filings which have to be done, and it get more and more heavy for the tax teams to get that done. And it's not. I think it's not what they really want to focus on when they wake up in the morning.
That's probably true, but also I think also, let's say, never a filing goes away, right? So. There are a lot of new taxes because governments just invite new tax systems, new rules. So it's only more compliance than less compliance, right?
And it's getting bigger and bigger, and I don't think that they really have the people to do the job, which is very stressful for them because, if you are late with your filings, you end up in being fined by the government, and then it's get bigger and bigger the mess you make internally. So it's really stressful for tax teams to deal with all those filings worldwide.
Yeah, that's true. And then of course there are also if we keep on the compliance, new countries let's say, or new countries, existing countries introducing new filings, right, or where tax becomes really dominant. Now, for instance, the MENA region, right? The e-invoicing is big. The transfer pricing, reporting, CBCR came into place. Corporate income tax returns need to be filed, although
it's once a year mostly, right?
Once a year, but even if, let's say, the amount, or let's say the corporate income tax rate or the VAT rate is low, the compliance burden is the same, right? That doesn't matter.
That's true. It's the same whether you have $1 billion turnover or $10,000 or euros in turnover. It's still the same filing. You have to do it. And also what you see with the international groups when they incorporate new entities into a new region, it adds up, right? So they have to dig into what filings they have to be done, who's going to do it, and it's just, like I said, it's a big burden.
Right.
For them. And instead, they also got tons of emails from business sides of tax, and I think they really like to answer that more than doing the tax filing. So it's every day probably have a thorough look on what you're going to do that day. Is it going to be a filing, or is it going to be the tax side of the business? And how do we get things done before we get fined?
Right, and the things need to be get done, right? Because if you're late with the filing, it's late. It's inevitable. There is probably a fine to be issued by a local tax authority. If you get, let's say, a lot of filings too late, you run the risk that you enter into tax questionnaires or even worse, tax audit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and that's also what we see when we talk to the international groups, and then they say, no, I don't really see that as a problem. I think I'm in control on your compliance, and then sometimes the CFO asks the questions, but how do you know that for sure? And then, which is a good question, and then basically the tax department, they don't really know whether they are fully in control on the compliance matters. So that's it's a big thing.
Absolutely. And if we then, let's say, focus on another C, right? So the let's say on the complexity. Just the Dutch tax authorities always say, we try to make it more easy for you.
Yeah, is that true? Do you really believe that they try it?
Oh, I don't think so.
No,
so I think it only becomes more and more difficult, all the filings. Perhaps for a personal income tax return in the Netherlands, it's fantastic, right? The pre-filing, basically, you just click, and yes, this is correct.
That's true. That's fairly easy nowadays. Yeah.
But for companies, right, or businesses who file their...
It's an ongoing process of changes, and it becomes more difficult. If you look back, we were at university for a couple of years together, right? Studied the old law, if you look at the income tax. And then things were about to change when introducing the new income tax, 2001. Right. Today we live in the year 2026, as you know, and just government and also the political parties, nobody really dares to make it... to make a change, a real change, right? Probably they need to do Control-Alt-Delete and start all over again. That's my opinion, at least. So it becomes, when you don't do the big changes, it becomes more and more complex.
Yeah, it's basically duct tape over duct tape over duct tape. Try to solve things which are basically insolvable.
There you go.
And as a result, indeed, the tax only becomes more and more complex,
more
right?
More complex. Look at your leg next week, surgery. That's not nice, but it's necessary, right? So you could do some nice, put some things on the knee and hope that it will go away. That's like in taxes, that doesn't fly. So it becomes more complex, and then you have to lean on your own knowledge, the knowledge of your team. If you look at the companies, then the knowledge of your advisors, just to cope with the increasing complexity, because this is only the Netherlands where we're talking about. But I think this is a worldwide problem and issue for tax people working in the international groups.
Absolutely. I think also, let's say, if you talk about Brazil or let's say China, where, let's say, those countries, they really protect their own businesses, obviously, and try to tax as much as possible. So you also get, let's say, if you talk about the complexity, people look different at exactly the same or tax topic or the same invoice or the same, and they look the same at the payment, but the outcome is totally different, which makes it, again, much more complex to... what's the real solution, right? So companies ending up sometimes in double taxation, which is something the CFO actually doesn't like, right? No one likes double taxation, just because of qualification differences, etc.
Yeah, it's becoming. I think it's becoming more and more a mess. If I look at the work I've been doing for more than 25 years in tax, it never really got more easy. during the years. It became more complex. It adds up with new legislation coming into place, whether that's from a worldwide perspective or a European perspective. Then indeed, you're absolutely right. And some countries look at it differently. They say, oh, I'll pass on this one, basically. Yeah? That's what you also see sometimes in Central Europe. They say, okay, we need to do is let's stall it for a couple of years. So how do you get grip on all those processes? It's a real burden. So again, if you combine the two C's, right? So the compliance and the complexity, more compliance, more complexity,
right?
New legislations, and then then you have to run into the third C, which is capacity, right? So exactly. And that's also a problem. What do you think about the capacity side of?
So let's say when both of us were basically studying tax law 25 years ago, we were in a room where there were 300, perhaps even 400 students.
Yeah.
And if we talk today to some of the professors who also give us, let's say, new ideas and talk about new legislations, their classes are 40, 50, 60 people, right? Of fresh students coming out of, let's say, gymnasium. So that's going to be a huge problem, I think, going forward, that more complex work, less or more complex, more compliance, because there are only more filings instead of less filings, and that needs to be done with less people in the end, or different kind of people with other skill sets, because there are just not enough resources anymore.
Fully agree. Let's talk about that in a minute. It's absolutely true. So it struck me big time when the professor told us indeed that there 20% maybe of the students from 20, 25 years ago. How are you going to cope with the work? And also, we learned from the industry that people say, I don't want to hire too many people also. So then how are tax teams going to deal with the tax works? And that's today, but also for the years to come, because this will probably never end.
No, and then next to basically the AI component now, which may give some relief and actually help, let's say, to get more done in less time, but tax authorities are going to do the same, right? So they also, what we see in the Netherlands is that tax authorities really compete and actually have sometimes even better secondary employee benefits than we as a tax firm back in the days were offering to our employees, because we just couldn't afford them, right? So it's also, it's kind of crazy if you think about it from an entrepreneurial point of view, that tax authorities just take away the employees and say, your day working starts when you enter the train, and if that's 2 hours from the real job, and it's crazy, right? How we would never be profitable if we would say to employees, just sit in the car, come whenever you like, and then.
I think I cried all night when we still had the advisory practice. That a very nice colleague of ours, indeed, he went from a full-time agreement to 4 days a week, and he earned more at the government, and his day started when he entered the train. It's while, as you know, in my head at least, it's the government should be there for the business practice and not the other way around, right? So, but this is also a thing. I don't know whether this is a worldwide system that governments pay more or have better agreements for people working in the tax industry. But indeed, in the Netherlands, it's a big thing.
I'm afraid it's kind of a shift. So perhaps the Netherlands is kind of a front runner here, and I'm not sure whether we should be proud of this kind of front running.
Probably not.
But they're creating only also more complexity, right? So more people, more rules.
I know, but you have the injury on the leg. We don't want people to get depressed, so we have the C's. But what's the outlook? Where's the sunny side of things happening today? You mentioned AI already.
The sunny side is probably it's going to give relief, right? So technology should, let's say, ease a little bit the pressure from the work people face today, and hopefully, let's say, AI can help, let's say, also with some complexity or to read very fast, obviously through court cases, new legislation, and come up with suggestions. Although, of course, you need people to verify. But hopefully, let's say, knowledgeable people will pick the right things out of what AI has been producing or came up with, I guess. So
they can do more in a day. We discussed earlier. We don't have to sit anymore in the library for 8 hours to do the case law study. So
with the Industrial Revolution, everyone was afraid about the machines, right? Well, it actually only helped. Then everyone was afraid of the internet. It actually only helped, and probably the same now with the AI wave coming over us. But this hopefully should solve a little bit the capacity and probably also the complexity issue a little bit. The compliancy will be there anyway, and if we train the models good enough, hopefully they're going to help also with the compliancy part. So
that's true.
In the end, there should be a relief, I guess.
And this is this what you see from the beginning of this year mostly? When you say somebody pushed a button in a different mindset on looking how to cope with all the tax work to be done for the companies, AI and a different method of.
I think yes, there was so much buzz around ChatGPT, Claude, other LLM models that basically top-down approach. People started to ask questions. What are you doing? And as a result, you see a lot of, let's say, also in the tax departments, tax advisory firms, AI and all kind of new technology dripping through. And I think that's also why you say, okay, it looks like someone pushed the button and all of a sudden, let's say, people are also more interested to learn more what kind of tax technology platforms are out there, how can it ease compliancy, complexity, help with the capacity issue, because there is an economical downturn doesn't mean that, let's say, less work needs to be done. There is just less money. So perhaps with even a reduction of workforce, you need to do at least the same filings, right?
And or more.
And sometimes even more if it's a restructuring. So that's what we see a lot.
So that's a very challenging way ahead of us. Then, if you look at the tax departments, because they need to combine all the AI and tooling things out there together with the increasing complexity and compliance. So it's, I think we see that shift also going on when we talk to the international groups.
That's true. And
there,
it sometimes looks like double work as well, right? Because if you move from one system or way of working to another system or way of working, it also takes time, right? So to get familiar with new software or a new platform or new ideas and get that implemented into an existing organization, that takes time.
At first it's even increasing the workload, because
Absolutely.
you have to look at the tooling, have to do the demos, see what's the best fit for you and the company for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years or maybe more, while the compliance still it's never going away. So it's challenging. I also see that when I personally talk to the tax departments, that they are doubting what to buy. Do you think they are too hesitant to?
Well, I'm not sure. Of course, they want to make the right decision. And if you don't know what's out in the world, then perhaps decision making takes a little bit longer, and you need to evaluate. There are many stakeholders. But sometimes I do agree, let's say, it just takes too long. They just make a decision, get started, because it will only hold you back and bring more issues later on. Mm-hmm. But I do understand that they like to see which solutions are there in the market, and take a good look.
Of course.
Which takes time. So
Yeah, but there's so many solutions out there today. And do you feel that the tax department is alone in that process, or is there the CEO, the CFO, IT, legal in on the project, or maybe even the business, or how?
Well, it helps, of course, a lot. Let's say if there is a push down, or if there is budget. So if CEO says, I want more IT or more platforms into the organization in order to, let's say, become more, let's say, 2035 proof, basically, right? And more future proof. That definitely helps. And we do see that CFO, CIO, IT people, legal departments, everyone would like to look on platforms, whatever it may be, in order to see whether it fits into an organization, whether it fits into the entire IT landscape, whether it fits into budgets, what's the ROI of the project, is it really necessary?
That makes sense.
It's
yeah, but also I see a fairly large group of people where the CFO says, "Hey, tax, it's your ball game. Don't whine about it every day. Just do it."
It's true. Figure it out. Buy something in order to get it done.
And then what? Because it's gonna happen anyway. So if you're stuck in between in such a company, what will be your?
Yeah, sometimes it's one of the people in the US once told me, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. Just do it, right? So I think you're right. If you are a tax director or heading a tax department, take full responsibility, fight for a budget, get it done, solve your 3 C's, right, with a platform that fits your purpose or other software solutions that fit your purpose. And just do it and ask for forgiveness if people say it was too expensive. Yeah. But you have to make this decision once, right? It's like if you're a factory, you also invest in new machines because after 30, 40 years, probably there is a better one in the market already.
And then you buy that particular machine. Yeah, that's
right.
True.
So instead of Excel, try to look for a software solution to do it better.
Yeah, I think the majority of the people are working on tooling. That's the push the button from the beginning of the year story, right? And I think that's very interesting to see. Luckily for us, we may help those companies in particular cases to get the business case done.
Sure.
And that's also new. We're invited in tax days for the larger firms just to talk about tax technology, which is very nice. And we learn a lot from each other. So that's a new thing that didn't happen 20 years ago.
No, it's true. And every demo, we more or less see and hear the same things, right? It's not that people work differently all over the world. No. It's there is a lot of commonality everywhere in processes, in how people deal with things, how they talk to each other. Yeah. Of course, legislation is different in every single country.
Yeah, but it's like a family, the tax people, huh?
Right.
It feels like a family. It's. I agree with you. It's a worldwide way of doing the tax work, dealing with the tax work.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah. So you can relate to all the stories they tell and the challenges they face. So exciting times ahead.
I think too. Well,
how's the leg?
Leg's still okay.
Still there.
It's Great. Still there. It doesn't run away, luckily. No. But I think it's almost the end of this episode again. So I want to thank our listeners. My name is Ruben, and I was your host of this episode. I want to thank my brother, Ramon, for being on my side.
Thank you all for listening.
Stay tuned to next month's episode. We'll discuss what the tax team of the future must look like to navigate through this changing environment. So thank you all for listening. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.